Hello, BookTube. I returned to you at last from the wilds of prose generation. I succeeded. Those of you who don't have any idea what I'm talking about, I was helping a friend to make a deadline. A rather huge amount of writing that wouldn't have been a problem if he had just done it. Instead, he said, oh, the deadline's way down the line, and forgot about it. And spent the money and didn't want to go to a generous commissioning editor who has the right to cancel his contract and say, I don't have anything for you. And so came to me at the very last minute and said, could you maybe help me? Could we work on this together? I know you can generate prose really fast if you put a mind to it. I said yes, of course. I always say yes. My answer is always yes. And we set to work. And I was hoping, he had a deadline of close of business on Friday. And I was kind of hoping that any editor that would give you a deadline of close of business on Friday when they don't plan to be in the office or answering office-related emails until Monday morning, I was kind of hoping that that editor, if approached by my friend, might be willing to just admit that and give the weekend. I told my friend, if you're going to send that email, make sure that you say it's for a few polishing touches. Don't under any circumstances say it's to write the work. And he sent that email, and his editor kindly, very happily said, sure, absolutely, no problem. Monday morning is fine. And so we continued. I say we in heavy air quotes, and we got it done. So I felt relieved. I will need to sleep tonight. I will need probably 3 hours of sleep tonight because I haven't had any in quite some time. But I feel like a weight has been lifted. I feel like I can return to you at last and chat to you and bore you to death. Frida, what are you doing? I swear she knows that I'm watching. She knows that she's on camera because she'll just spiral out of control until I say her name. She has been, Frida, don't do it. She has been an enormous relief to me. Every time I've needed a break at any hour of the day or night, I've been able to she's always up to talk or to play or to go out for a walk. That's been wonderful. I am nevertheless glad this is over. I have two main questions now about this gigantic wad of writing. Basically, NaNoWriMo, only in 4 days. I have basically two questions about it. Question number one is, was I able to control myself sufficiently so that there's no great qualitative difference between what I did and what my friend has done or can do in the future? In other words, am I making trouble for my friend down the line with his publisher? And the second question is, what on earth am I going to do a year down the line when it comes time to review this thing? What am I supposed to say? So-and-so has outdone himself? I guess I'll find out when the time comes. I have faced variations on that problem before. I manage. But I felt surely we should celebrate talking to each other again after a dry spell with the mail. So I've got a couple of things to show you. First is the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. It's a broadsheet newspaper on the island of Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts. The Gazette during the summer is in two sections, and it finishes up with the gardening and the bird watching columns that are so nice. I am not in this issue, but this issue talks all about the Delta variant, the permeable membrane, the fact that the vineyard being an island does not spare it. I remember watching tensely, reading the Vineyard Gazette tensely every week to get to the headline that I actually cut out and saved. The headline that says, First Island COVID Case Detected. For a while before that headline is inevitable. That never doesn't happen. But for a while before it did, I could dream. And I bet a lot of people on the vineyard dreamt that maybe it wouldn't happen. That maybe it wouldn't cross with the ferry. And now the Delta variant is making the headlines of the Gazette. But I love reading. I love reading the Gazette anyway. So I got the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. I also got the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement. So really, I have the best of both worlds. If you're getting the Vineyard Gazette and the TLS in the mail, what more do you need? And the TLS, as I've said many times, is, in my opinion, the greatest literary journal in the English-speaking world. If I had 10 times as much money, the book section at Big Canoe News might give it a run for its money, but I don't. I am, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I am a dedicated print newspaper for pay book section editor, for a tiny newspaper in northern Georgia called Big Canoe News. 2 full pages of books covered every month. Full color, beautifully designed. Not just me. It's not just me saying it. I know I'm biased, but ask anybody. Take a look at it yourself. Every issue of Big Canoe News is free in the electronic version online. Take a look at what the design people make it look like. It's beautiful. And in an age where arts editors maybe get told they can run a book review every week or every 2 weeks, I am not an arts editor for Big Canoe News. I am just the books editor. 2 full, glorious pages of books coverage. But I don't compete with the TLS at the moment. Big shocker there. There are quite a few things that were of interest in this issue. Like, for instance, the headline article, which is all about the art of biography. It's by Craig Brown. And the title of it is Nothing is Real, The Slippery Art of Biography. And at one point in the piece, we're told, biography, as a form, is necessarily artificial. In the end, all biography is a form of fiction. As Peter Ackroyd once said, quote, fiction requires truth-telling, whereas in a biography one can make things up. Introducing Burning Man, her extraordinary new book covering 10 years in the life of D.H. Lawrence, Frances Wilson writes, quote, just as writers of fiction might provide a disclaimer declaring that what follows is a work of imagination not based on real characters, and writers of nonfiction might provide a disclaimer declaring that what follows is not a work of imagination, and very much based on real characters, I should similarly state that Burning Man is a work of nonfiction, which is also a work of imagination. As if works of imagination are not works of nonfiction. As if there's no difference between the truth that you can demonstrate and something that you make up out of your imagination. As if there's no difference between those two things. When Frances Wilson, if really pressed for time, would not imagine that there was a bridge across the Thames that's a quarter of a mile closer to where she has to go than the bridge that is actually across the Thames, and then attempt to walk across the Thames on that imaginary bridge. Frances Wilson would not do that. And before Frances Wilson refused to do that and walk the quarter of a mile to the real bridge, Frances Wilson would not say, I should probably stipulate that this is just a work of imagination. Ridiculous. But then Craig Brown goes on. Biography is at the mercy of information, and information is seldom where you want it. Or occasionally there is a wealth of information, but most of it is window dressing. The shop itself is shut, visible only through the front window, its private offices firmly under lock and key. This is what makes biography the most sheepish and constrained of the arts, and the least like life. Needless to say, I completely disagree. If you are writing a biography and you find the shop closed and you can just look through the windows, then what you write is, in this area of the subject's life, the shop was closed and we can only look through the windows. Or you maybe get off your duff and go hunting to find the key. That's observation number 1. Observation number 2, when I read sheep dip like that, is immediately to think, well, okay, that's nonsense, but at least it tells me now not to trust a single thing that Craig Brown writes if he writes biography. So I went to his biography. Craig Brown's most recent book, 1, 2, 3, 4, The Beatles in Time, in 2020, won the Bailey Gifford Prize for nonfiction. So I know now, I will make a mental note now, that Craig Brown is absolutely not to be trusted. He doesn't think that a biographer has any duty to the truth. In fact, it may be that he's just zillennial enough not to think the truth exists. One way or t'other, I now have his name in me book. But then we get to the letters page. The letters page is typically where fights occur. And a fight is brewing, very much brewing. Someone at Brown University, you never want to pick a fight with anybody from Brown, picked a fight with Sean McMeekin about his book, Stalin's War. And that's brewing, but it hasn't reached the boiling point yet. The boiling point will come next week when Sean McMeekin replies. His reputation, his ability to read, has been called on the carpet in this issue directly. And as I've said many times before, when it comes to the letters page of the journal like the TLS, if you're an author, you can't let that go. You should. But you can't. You shouldn't pick a fight. You shouldn't keep a fight going. It isn't worth it. It's not worth it. In the long run, all it's going to do is make a whole bunch of people do what I just did about Craig Brown and put your name in their book. And you don't want that. But it's not at its peak yet. That's next time, I think. But we do have a great note from someone writing from Oxford about the book I mentioned last time, Traitor King, about the Duke of Windsor during World War II and right before. The writer writes, A.N. Wilson, reviewing Andrew Lowney's Traitor King, suggests that the Duke of Windsor, on his visit to Germany in 1937, actively encouraged Hitler, quote, in the belief that he would be victorious and find in the Windsors a willing puppet king and queen. Since at that point there was no prospect of Neville Chamberlain's procuring a British declaration of war, that can only mean that the Duke was urging Hitler to be the aggressor. I hadn't actually thought of that. The author is right. As far as timing goes, that's the only explanation for the comment. As far as timing goes, the timing of that comment when the Duke of Windsor made it, it would have been made at a time when England had a king. And further compounds this rat's guilt. And then the third thing that I wanted to mention here is a review. But not like usual reviews in the TLS. The TLS is usually very sober, and usually the barbs are buried very deep. But every once in a great while, their editorial board will allow the appearance of something that in critical worlds is called a takedown, where the reviewer makes no pretense of trying to sell an even-handed view of the book. They just rip it to shreds and leave the bloodied corpse on the ground. Writing a really good takedown is harder than you think. Spleen will have its out. But spleen is only one quality of a really good takedown, the least important quality. You have to make a case, and you have to do it in the teeth of opposition, and keep in mind, most readers' sense of fair play is going to make them the opposition. When they get a sense in paragraph 2 that you're writing a takedown, they're going to be on the side of the author the whole time. And the goal of your takedown is not just to tear apart the book, it's to convince those readers that you are right. It's no easy thing. And I understand the editorial position of the Times Literary Supplement, the editorial board, because they let Michael Hoffman write a corker of a takedown review of Colm Tobin's The Magician, his new historical novel, The Magician, which is getting a fair amount of positive praise. I don't think it's out in this country yet, but it's coming out soon if it's not out already. And it will get praise here. I guarantee you it will, but there's not a scrap of praise in this review. It's damning instead, right down to the aria at the end. In all this soap opera, tedious and poorly told and lacking insight and accuracy to them as no, breathless and arbitrary and inconsequential to others, it is hard even to see Thomas. Harder still to guess what he might represent to the author. What is he for? An example of obduracy, of career success, of diminishing returns, of keeping on trucking, of the virtue of the man at his desk so heroically shipped from Munich through countries and continents and all kinds of adverse circumstances, inflation, Hitler, another world war, McCarthyism. It must be little more than a periodic campy flutter at waiters and ephebes, the queer eye on a straight guy, which hasn't been the news for decades, if it ever was. That's been, as German says, eaten. The Magician isn't just a bad book, or a misconceived book, or a book that should never have been written. It is in some sense a book that doesn't exist. Crap, hat, no rabbit. Crap, hat, no rabbit. That is quite the review for the TLS. I have no idea what the fallout from that will be. In a perfect world, of course, Colm Tobin subscribes to the TLS and reads it religiously like I do. I guarantee you he's going to read that review. Of course he is. It's the thing that everybody wants. In fact, my guess would be that he was tipped off to it before it made print. And that means we are dealing with the Heisenberg uncertainty of professionalism. We're dealing with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of professionalism. If Colm Tobin is professional, he will take his lumps and keep his gob shut. And if he can't do that, then he will either write a blistering response to that absolutely damning takedown, or he will thinly suborn a friend of his to do it. I don't know which is more pathetic. I'm hoping neither one happens. I want him to stay silent. Once upon a time, it was the ironclad rule of authors. I know the age of social media makes that unthinkable, but it is still the ironclad rule. If you get a bad review, you take it on the chin. You don't write in. You don't write in to the TLS. And you don't get your friend down the road to do it either. It'll be painfully obvious if that's what he does. So I'm hoping he doesn't do it. We shall see. We shall see. That, as far as I could see, the, usually the thin hook on which writers will sometimes hang their justification for writing in basically to complain about a negative review, which is what it is, and that's not anything a writer should ever do. Usually, the thin hook on which they will hang their justification is that there's some factual mistake in the takedown. I didn't see any in this one. So we shall see. If it happens next week, I will report back. But then we can get to more peaceful subjects. We can do books. We have a couple of packages of mail here, so let's see what we have here. Oh, very good. Okay, this is the finished copy of. This is going to be a $17 paperback of the new reprint of My Policeman by Beth Ann Roberts. One of these requisite black and white semi-erotic covers that On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous or Lie With Me, or they sort of made this de rigueur. This is now the trend, and it has to be that way if there's any kind of gay plot line, and there is one in here. It is 1950s Brighton that Marion first catches sight of Tom. He teaches her to swim, gently guiding her through the water in the shadow of the city's famous pier, and Marion is smitten, determined her love alone will be enough for them both. A few years later, Tom meets Patrick, a curator at the Brighton Museum. Patrick is besotted and opens Tom's eyes to a glamorous, sophisticated new world of art, travel, and beauty. Tom is their policeman, and at this age it is safer for him to marry Marion and meet Patrick in secret. The two lovers must share him until one of them breaks and 3 lives are destroyed. And it doesn't mention on the cover here, but the movie, I mean, it mentions it's going to be a movie. And the movie is going to star Harry Styles. It's a yardstick in a few ways. Like all 20-something tobacco addicts, if you are a pop star or a singer or especially an actor, you will have an apprentice period where it cannot be known that you are a tobacco addict, where that fact has to be hidden. You have to make sure that you don't indulge in your drug addiction in public. You have to make sure you don't do it on camera. You have to make sure, because in that early stage, if you're pretty, you need the tween girls. You need Tiger Beat magazine. You need things like that, and that can't happen. That the two negate each other. And when young 20-something actors are drug addicts, they want nothing more than to validate their drug addiction. They don't want to get rid of it. They want to validate it, and the way to validate it is to do it on camera in front of millions of people. Tom Holland had the same thing. It's now practically written in his contract that when he's not Spider-Man, he must be able to smoke in all of his movies. There has been no exception. In my opinion, there will be no exception until he dies spitting up blood of lung cancer at the age of 51. And the whole of the industry says, boy, isn't this a shame? How unexpected. Thought we'd have 50 more years of Tom Holland. My prediction would be that when he's not playing Peter Parker, he will smoke in every movie. And he's gotten a lot less cautious about being caught by paparazzi because he wants to make sure that this is validated. Same thing has been true of Harry Styles. He's been smoking nonstop since he was 11. And it's bothered him. You know, he and his bandmates had those Teen Beat magazines. They absolutely had to hide that. Even when surreptitious photos or videos leaked, and this movie will be a chance for Harry Styles to change that, for him to smoke all through the movie just as a matter of course. That's one important thing that this will represent. And another important thing that it will represent is his attempt, after a few movies that he's been in, to be taken seriously as a leading man, to be taken seriously as an actor. And he should be. He actually has quite a bit of talent, far more talent for acting than for music. He should be taken seriously. And if My Policeman is the thing that does it, then no one will be happier for him than I'm hoping that it does. I'm hoping that this means that he will be considered for serious roles, all kinds of serious roles. I saw him, if any of you did, on Saturday Night Live. You know that he has a real instinct for comedy. He also has a real instinct for drama. I've seen every movie appearance that he's had. He's really good at it. So, and you know, when he's covered up so that you can't see his 80 million tattoos, he's pretty gorgeous. So that'll be one of the things of interest for me here. I have a screener for this thing that I've had for a while. I haven't watched it. I have an electronic screener of this that a friend sent me. That I don't imagine there's much that it won't have in it. I have a screener for Dune that my friend warned me, this will give you a hint of what Dune is like, but a lot of the green screen stuff is not going to be in here. And I don't want to watch it for the first time with that. I want to give this new movie version of Dune as much of a chance as possible to please me. So I've just sort of let that thing sit there. I have another thing, too. I have another screener as well. It's a disaster movie. Isn't that terrible? I can't remember the name of it. It's an asteroid movie. But I had a screener for that, too. Every time I tell myself, you're going to sit down and watch this tonight, you're going to put time aside and sit there and watch this, I get to that moment and think, I don't really want to. I watch BookTube while I'm writing. But when it comes time, when my pumpkin time comes, when midnight comes, I want to read. So I haven't watched this. So I don't know if my prediction is true and that this is a standout performance, but I'm certainly hoping that it is. So that's our first book, My Policeman, in a finished copy. I thought the last one that I got was finished, but I guess not, because I have another one. Which means, I guess, that I have a double of this. Right? This is the finished copy, but I have the earlier version that looked exactly like this. So if one of you wants this came out in the 70s? Is that right? No, 2012. This came out in 2012. It's being reprinted now that it's in the theaters. If one of you wants this, just let me know. Then we have this other package, and then we'll be done. I think more mail is probably coming today, but what have we got here? Oh, very good. Okay. Some of you will have seen this on British channel. Okay, so this comes out in a month. This is by Jeanette Winterson, and this is 12 Bites. How we got here, where we might go next. Beloved writer Jeanette Winterson has been circling the topic of artificial intelligence for some time. Her last novel, Frankenstein, which I wasn't going to pay much attention to. I don't typically like this author. But it was actually watching Britta's channel on her channel, she made it clear that she loves this author and also takes her seriously. And that is what we're all on BookTube for, right? You watch someone for video after video, you start to appreciate, you start to take them seriously as a reader, and that changes what you take seriously as a reader. So I've tried Frankenstein and loved it. Just loved it. So anyway, what have we got here? Her last novel is a modern riff on the classic that begins with the life of Mary Shelley and leaps between the 17th century and the future, preoccupied with transhumanism, AI, and robots. That Shelley imagined a created intelligence in her fiction became part of Winterson's fixation on the fast-approaching singularity and the future we are all moving toward. Her new essay collection, and first nonfiction since her best-selling Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, is the result of her deep consideration of artificial intelligence in all its bewildering manifestations. And Britta mentions this in her video. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it down below. She mentions the fact that how enchanting, how compelling it is when you just simply respect an author's imagination and intelligence to the point where you're willing to follow wherever that imagination goes. I especially love it when an author's own publisher respects them enough to say, whatever your next book is, we want. And I think that's true with this author. So I'm not looking at this and saying, well, what are her qualifications for writing about AI? Not at all. Instead, I'm saying, bring it on. Give it to me. Through brilliant, laser-focused, uniquely pointed, and witty storytelling. Slow down there, Seymour. I'll quite literally be the judge of that. Winterson looks to history, religion, myth, literature, and politics to help us understand the radical changes to the way we live and love that are happening now. From the algorithms, the data dossier that your whole life, that data dossier your whole life. Okay, dossier is not a verb. That create a data dossier of your whole life to the weirdness of backing up your brain. There's much to consider about what's now and what's next. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, great. Well, I'm totally on board. I saw this on Britta's channel and remembered that I had, I think, a NetGalley copy. It was the NetGalley copy that I had. I saw it on British Channel and immediately felt eager to get the copy. The publishing world tends not to let me down, even in these days of the Delta variant, and there we go. They did fantastic. So I will get to this right away. In fact, I can get to both of these right away. Those are our books, My Policeman and 12 Bites, plus the TLS and the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. So a bit of a mail haul for you to get back in the swing of things. But I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.